Hello again, sir. Welcome to my e-economist presentation. Today we'll be speaking about and reflecting about my past 5 months learning this course and the future plans that this course would help me achieve. Now, let's begin with the four strands. Now, firstly, I have economic fundamentals, which is basically market structures, command, free, mixed, and traditional. I learned about supply and demand, an economic perspective, and stakeholders. This basically, as a skill, taught me how to understand. Now, firms, market, and economic stakeholders, that was mainly business and market structures, particularly the labor union, but all of the unions were covered, governmental roles as well, and that basically taught me how to make decisions. Now, for the third unit, which is the macroeconomics, I learned about economic structures and performances, fiscal and monetary policy, and this taught me how to analyze. Now, considering the global interdependence and inequalities, this taught me models, theories of trade, internationally as well, global inequalities and inequalities. Now, you see, sir, this taught me how to be ethical. Not that it wasn't already covered before, but this solidified this. Now, my prior thoughts to economics. Before, sir, I wasn't fully aware of how economics worked. I honestly thought economics was just an understanding of global statistics and what they mean. Now, I thought an economist also would just analyze stocks and other financial charts based on what they would conclude off the chart of a company or a nation or whatever is good or not, and then would predict the future with that information. Now, what I did know about that would be the supply and demand, interest maybe. Now, you see this first image, it's a bunch more simple than the one we saw on the first slide because I knew the very basics. Now, considering economists themselves, I thought they were just purely money-minded. I thought half of them were evil people. I'm not saying that they aren't, but after learning about very famous, economists such as Yuri Genizi or Muhammad Yunus, I understood that economy is a whole lot of things, and it can be used in a multitude of scenarios, and that is why think like an economist is such a popular term. Now let's get on to that. How do we think like an economist? I learned how to adapt to how to think like an economist. That there's not one straight way to think like an economist. There's many different routes. And we have to not allow opinions or bias to ever impact a decision. Now you see, sir, there's a lot of trade-offs. There's opportunity costs you have to understand and be firm and confident with the decision. I went from overthinking everything to now, simplifying everything down. I'll scan the data and information and make a reasonable conclusion. As you can see here, it's quite simple when broken down. Now, let's talk about global economic vision. This is generally what is clarified for me. Now you see ethics and crucial and impacts business. Ethics is not just to be kind, it actually has a profitability factor. I learned about 4 different economists and 3 of their ideologies, and I learned that maintaining a business and starting a business is 2 different things, and to start a business is not as hard, but to maintain one is extremely difficult. And through that, I learned that this world has a lot of potential, because everybody has a certain skill. You see, sir, everybody has a part to play in this world, and I didn't necessarily believe in that before this presentation, for this whole unit, honestly, this whole class, but I do believe in it now strongly. Now let's talk about the bigger picture. So straight up, I can see the forest from the trees, but before that, not necessarily. I thought I understood economics to a certain extent. Looking back at it, I didn't, and even while completing this culminating, which I believe I did this slide on January 11th, I wasn't sure, but now I am confident in what I know. I can see that GDP does not necessarily equal wealth or a good economy. I learned that pollution and human well-being has a part to play as well. I learned about the HPI, HDI, and GDP. They're not necessarily the same thing in any way, shape, or form. A good example was of my presentation, actually, so it's a screenshot of it, how Saudi Arabia had a higher GDP than Poland by a lot. but Poland is still much, much higher in an economy, much better economy than Saudi Arabia. And this is due to multiple factors, and this is measured by GPI. And this is where I say, sir, I believe GPI is better than GDP, because it looks at social, economic, environmental, all factors to determining a conclusion. Now let's talk about economic remembrance. After OP, I'd first like to thank you and them as a school, because collectively you have helped me come to where I am today. You've seen me perform very poorly in recent courses, but now I'm consistently doing well. But regarding economics, I would remember them both for monetary and fiscal policies, supply and demand, economic perspective, business and market structures. Those are the main topics. And I would also remember certain things that stood out to me, such as an economic performance of GDP or something like that. Also, conclusions, learning how to decide, such as this example of fiscal versus monetary policy. And now you see, sir, between these things, I also learned that thinking like an economist is extremely crucial in everyday life. And I also remember that many of the studies that I've done, although this is not directly OP related, videos I've watched, hundreds of them, even the ones that I've memorized, I appreciated all of them, and it gave me a new vision to the world. Now, let's talk about future and economic impact. Sir, I am 17 with very little to my name. I cannot do that much. However, following Muhammad Yunus's economic philosophy on charity, which is rather than just direct donation, he would create opportunity. And that's what I plan to do. You see, sir, when I go to university, I plan to do a community startup like business. And this, obviously, in university, I'd be at campus. I'd have a really big audience instantly. And to get more deep into it, I'm probably going to go into business administration, and I'd like to do my MBA at a different university, top one, hopefully. And this would mean, by that time at least, hopefully I'd already have a big audience, and then I can create opportunity. So rather than, say, donating $1,000, I use that $1,000 to create something, and then make 10 people learn how to make $100 as many times as they want. That is honestly it, sir. Thank you very much for all your help. Thank you very much for teaching me what I needed to learn, because it will help me in my career and in my life every day. So thank you very much. Have a good day.